so that I don't, as I'm helping one-on-one, I want to be able to like give you guys ample things to do. And it doesn't, just like any program, it doesn't hurt to just poke around and play. Keyshot's pretty user-friendly. So I just want to show you how to bring your part in and then like some basics, and then you can play to your heart's content. So when you open up Keyshot, it should look something like this. I believe this is the default dialog. Does everyone agree or no? I don't think I customized anything. If this looks like wildly different, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to continue. So the first way to start is you go to File, Import. And here you want to remember what your assembly was called. So mine is microwave asm01, and I'm just going to click on Open. It asks you for all the stuff. You can just leave it to default and click on Import. This is important. This dialog is important when you are trying to add new things to an already existing scene. So for example, if I have my beautiful rendering set up and my client says we changed our mind, we don't want any knobs on this, or no, sorry, we changed our mind, we have our in-house knob design, we want you to use this one instead. If I'm importing that new knob into my existing rendering, that's when this pop-up menu is important. For now, it doesn't matter, so just click Import. And then it thinks, and boom, you got your part. Keyshot is similar but different navigation-wise to SolidWorks. So if I roll my mouse wheel, I zoom in and out. The main difference is if I click the mouse wheel, it pans, it doesn't tilt. If I left click, that's how I get my tilt. So that's the main difference in navigation. The default scene's pretty good. The way to add materials is literally click and drag. So your materials on the left here, what we're looking at, here on the left you have your library, and over here you have your project. So this is kind of like your options menu, and this is kind of like the details of what you have in there, okay? So over here on the left, you can go and look. So for example, I can find plastic, I can expand this. Maybe I want some like hard plastic, rough and shiny, kind of two differences. So let's say I want this to be like shiny black. I can click on this. It's like a sphere, but it's like kind of the Keyshot logo. Click on this and drag it over, and you can see like if I hover over materials, it starts to show, or bodies, it starts to show me what it might look like. So I can apply that. I apologize, I totally forgot to tell you guys something in SolidWorks. So those of you that, show of hands, how many people need to like boot Mac to use Keyshot? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's totally fine. Have you guys done that yet or no? Are you still in SolidWorks? Okay. Okay, that's fine. No, you guys are totally, it's fine to switch to Mac. I just want to the last thing I want to do is forget to tell you guys something like I just did now, and have to have you guys like switch back and forth. So I'm sorry, one thing I forgot to mention to you guys is when you bring this into Keyshot, it's going to default material selections to each body. However, if you take a material choice, so like, you know what, I haven't showed you guys this in SolidWorks, have I? Have I showed you how to change the color of bodies in SolidWorks? I have not. My apologies. It's not a big deal. It can be useful to just like help organize your file. Okay, so I'm sorry. Let's back up a bit here. Does everyone still have SolidWorks open? And if not, is it hard to get it back open? You got to jump back and forth? Okay. Sure. In Keyshot or in SolidWorks? So let's say I want the handle to be a different color. If I drag this over to here, because it's its own body, it'll be its own handle. Now that said, because it's from an assembly, right? Now, however, look at the door. The door is a different part, or sorry, the door is a different body from the control panel. But because they're in the same part, it does snap them together. However, so I'm going to make that green. You can right-click on this door, and you can say unlink material. And now if I go over here, now it'll be blue. Now I could do this too. If I drag this now into the handle, I believe it's going to give me a pop-up that says, a material with the same name is already in use. Do you want to link these materials? I could say yes. And now whenever I change the door, it's going to change the handle at the same time. Keyshot's like super user-friendly. I love Keyshot. What I neglected to tell you guys and why I was saying going back into SolidWorks was to say that Keyshot gives you different, just like I showed you with material application there, it snaps it to the overall body. You may change the color of a face. So just like in Keyshot here, the whole control panel, I forget what I made it, turned green. Before I import this to Keyshot, if I click on this face in SolidWorks, and I'm hovering over it, this pops up. If that doesn't pop up, you can always right click. Up here, you can see appearances. It looks like a little beach ball with a pencil. If I click on here, it gives me different options. I can say, hey, I want the body to be a color. It's like, hey, what do you want to select? Is it the feature? Was it the cut? Is it the face? Is it the overall microwave in the assembly? So let's say I want to change the overall body color. I can click on body here. And then it's like, my computer thinks because it's Friday, I'm really tired. And then over here, I got some color options. And I can change whatever color I want that to be. So that's how I made that dark gray. Or there's like an infinite color picker here. So that's one thing I can do to change the color of a body in SolidWorks. So again, I'll do that for my door. I can click on the door, I can right click on it. Again, it's the beach ball at the top, it says appearances. I click on the down arrow. And here again, it's asking me what do I want to change the appearance of. Here I want to say it's the body. For what it's worth, I believe this is the hierarchy in what takes importance. So meaning to say if I change the body to be orange, if I now take this face and right click on it and change the appearance, so now you'll notice the body has an orange attached to it. If I click on face, because face is above body, it will overwrite whatever is below it. So in this case, I could make this face green, or whatever that color is, mint green. Now if I import this into Keyshot, I can now apply a different material to this green face than to the orange. So the reason that I bring that up, here, let me open this is the file I put together when I talked about Project 2. Nope. Never mind, I undid it. Forget I said that. You might want to select this face. This is what I recommend everyone do, is on your control panel face, select this. So again, right click, go to appearances. In this instance, we want it to be just the face. And change it to any color, doesn't matter. So that when you go into Keyshot, you have the option to change the control panel face as if it were like a membrane or a sticker. The good news is, if I'm in Keyshot, I can always match these two bodies together if I just make the same material. So I can always go that way. It's hard to go the other way. I can't, once I'm in Keyshot, split that face. At least not to my knowledge. My full disclosure, my familiarity with Keyshot is with Keyshot 5. I've been using this a lot more recently just to like make sure I know it for you guys. So it's a little more in-depth now. There is a chance I can maybe play with this. Unfortunately, it did not cross my mind to check that. But as far as I know, you cannot break a face out once you're in Keyshot. You should do it in SolidWorks. Okay, sorry, that was a big tangent. I forgot to mention that. You'll notice I did it on the knobs here. On the knobs, I put little cut-in indents for like indicators, so you know which side is up and down, right? And this face, I made a different color so that now I can drag in and make those whatever I need to. So really what I wanted to show you guys is how to import this. So let's say you make that change in SolidWorks. So my face is now a different color. I can hit save. It's saying, hey, do you want to update everything? I'm saying, yeah. Because I'm saving the assembly, it's asking me, do I want to update my links? Do I want to update those part changes too? I'm saying, yes, I do. And now in Keyshot here, this is the models I have in here. I can go in here, I can right click and hit delete. Maybe I don't want that. And now I can do the same thing. I can go file, import. You know what I should, and double click on this and just say import, and now it should snap this. And now you guys can see my face is different here. Now I can, let's say, I want this control panel to be different. I imported the part, not the assembly. Shame on me. So once again, cool. Either, whatever I'm working in, there's no right or wrong way. The assembly, it updates the part when I hit save. Now the assembly, I can apply a material to the assembly itself, in which case that would only be in the assembly, and I believe it overwrites the part. Let me show you that. That's a good question. So I can go here, I can right click on this, and once again, if I go to appearances, you'll notice the one at the top is microwave. If I select this, and I think if I like, you can see immediately the whole thing turned gray. If I select something obnoxious like red. Okay, so it's only the part in the assembly. Gotcha. So now if I open up this part though, just the part file, it should still be orange and yellow. See that? But in the assembly, I'm telling it to be red. So that overrides. You can always go over here. This is where all these like materials are hidden. And if you click on the beach ball here, you can see I have all the colors. I can always right click on this and say remove appearance, and then it drops away. So that's where you find it. It's the beach ball. It can be confusing. There's three options here. There's the scene, decals, which you don't really use unless you're doing like renders or stuff, or the beach ball. So yeah, once you're in Keyshot, again, it's just click and drag. Feel free to play with the materials. Think about what what you want your microwave to look like. Some fun materials are the Exalta paints. They have these kind of like really nice metallic flecks in here. So you can play around with materials this way. If you hit Control and click and drag, you'll notice the lighting's changing, but that's how you spin your scene around. It's also possible to once you have an angle that you like how your microwave looks, you can go to camera here. And again, we're going to go into this in depth later, and you can just click this plus and it saves a new scene. So now if I rotate my camera around and click back on here, it snaps it back to where I want. So that's how you set up a view that you like. Cool. That's just enough for you guys to play with while I do some one-on-one. Are there any questions on any of those basic Keyshot stuff? Okay. So yeah, if everyone wants to fire up Keyshots, I'll go through again what I did, just in case people needed to switch over to their Macs and stuff, their Mac side of their Mac computer. Does everyone have Keyshot open? Cool. Okay. So again, just to reiterate what we did before, we go to File, Imports. You want to now navigate to wherever your assembly is saved. Now, I encourage everyone to follow along, but if you still want to go and make changes to your CAD file, by all means, you can do that and repeat this process. Again, I'm recording it so you can watch it again. So here I'm going to click on my microwave assembly. You can always re-import your changes into the same file, and maybe I can cover that at the end. And really, it should default to the same. So you just go import on there. It should snap to the ground, right? It should look like it's sitting on a ground plane. If for some reason it's not, for some reason it's not, you can click on your model here on the right under Model Sets, and go to Position below and click on Snap to Ground. If for some reason it's floating, but it should default, so it looks like it's sitting on that ground plane. Okay, bless you. That will forever be in the recorded video, the massive sneeze. Anytime I make a mistake or say something stupid, I'm like, oh great, it's going to be on YouTube for everyone to see. It doesn't matter, I'm just teasing. Okay, if for some reason your object is floating, you look on the right here. I'm assuming everyone has the similar layout to what I have. You click on the model here. It's going to default to properties. You want to click on position. It's in the middle. See that blue line changes? And on position, there's an option here that says snap to ground. If you click on that, if your object was floating for some reason, it should snap it to the ground. Okay, let's take a look. Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a look at just the basics now and like what we see on our screen. Okay. Keyshot obviously is a rendering program. On the left, you have the library. This is where you have all of your materials to pick from, all of your environments to pick from, backplate images if you want to make it look like your, if I want to make it look like my microwave is sitting on a park bench or something. Um, that's where you can pick this. Can I control Z out of this park bench? Undo backplate, cool. So that's where, this is like your options are. On the right is your project, okay? So there are similarities. So you'll notice there's material on the left and there's material on the right. Material on the left is your library to choose from. Material on the right is what you have applied and what you can edit and so on and so forth. If I make an analogy to SolidWorks, the right side here is kind of your properties dialog box. So when you make a new feature, everything on the right is what you use to edit. Again, just like material, there's also your environment. This is where you can rotate it. You can add spotlights and stuff. You can modify the stock stuff on the right side of your screen. Of course, the middle is the object itself. It kind of renders real time or updates it. Down here, these are the windows that are open, that are pressed in. So again, you can see library is blue and project is blue. We're not getting into animation. Import, I don't know what this looks like. I can click on it. Okay, it just brings up the import dialog box. The only other one that really matters down here is render, and we'll get into this later. But this is how you output a rendering of your object. So this is where the computer, you tell it, okay, I'm good, I have the view I want, I have the lighting I want, the materials I want you now to calculate and produce a high quality image from this view that I have. So that's what we're looking at here. Again, recap on navigation. Mouse wheel zooms in and out. Left click and drag tilts. Mouse click and drag pans. Okay. Any questions on the basics? Is there anything? This is a toolbar up here. I don't know. I kind of ignore it. I'll be honest. I can't think of. Yeah. Over here, it's mainly colors and environment that I use over here. I'm not really using color, or sorry, materials and environment, my mistake. I'm not really using colors, I'm not really using texture. Texture sometimes, depends what you're doing. Okay. So now let's get into some materials. I kind of showed you guys this before, but it's literally click and drag. So some basics on materials. Just as an FYI, for your information, clear material takes longer to render, especially if there's a lot of refraction. There's just a lot more computer processing there. Just for what it's worth, it's good to know. In general, a good starting point is plastic and picking either rough or shiny, depending on whether you want it to be gloss or matte. You can dial that in later though. Right now we're just applying stock materials. I'll show you guys how to kind of tweak it as you want. So, this is optional for whatever you want to make your microwave. Again, I could make this body black, shiny black. Another option that I use sometimes, if I want it to be even more shiny or even more pure black, is to go to paints. Let's look at this. That did not change too much. Let's see metallic. Let me see if I can get a good example of this. Yeah, it's incredibly subtle. But okay, probably set this up maybe better with. What is? I don't know. I guess never mind. The point I'm trying to make is pretty similar. It's not changing too much. For what it's worth, the black paint, shiny black paint, tends to be a little bit blacker and a little bit more contrast. I think my lighting in my scene right now isn't showing it quite as good. But it's also worth noting what I'm trying to show. You can see it's pretty nuanced. It's very similar. You can play with the rough materials. Again, it's going to be more matte. So like, for example, if you want your handles to look like they're like soft white, one of the requirements is, or strongly encouraged, is that the handle and the knob are the same color. We talk about product semantics, and so are the touch points colored the same way. That thing that popped up again, it was asking if I wanted to link materials. Because I had just applied soft white to the handle, I now applied it to the knobs. It's saying, hey, do you want these two to be the same? So now whenever I apply a material to it, it changes. Now, of course, these aren't the only colors that you have. These are the only default colors. Again, we'll get into deeper editing later. So for now, I'm just probably going to leave mine at, I'll leave them at blue. Doesn't matter. I forgot to re-mention about changing the color of the control panel. Hopefully you guys did that when we talked about it last time. So for example, here I can also change this to maybe a shiny black. In this case, I don't want to link the materials, so I'm going to click no. And again, linking means if you change one, you change the other. But you can always undo it. You can always undo the link by literally right-click and saying unlink materials. It's here somewhere, right there. Unlink material. Now for the door and the control panel, you could pick something metal, right? So like aluminum. Let's see, is there like, I'm sure that, yeah, here we go, stainless steel. You know, brushed stainless if you want it. I really like, again, here it's asking if I want to link the materials. In this case, I do, because I want my control panel and door to look like they're, you know, cohesive together. Again, I like the Axalta paint. There's a lot of options here. These colors are harder to change, but they have a kind of like a nice fleck and like texture to them. So for example, I could pick like the Silva is one I tend to use quite a lot. It has this kind of like metallic fleck built into it. When I do client work, I like to ask them, it depends on what they're doing, but some places have their preferred materials, especially if it's like, you know, Weber's done a lot of renders with stainless steel. They maybe have a stainless steel that they like to use that they're used to seeing. Some places are willing to share those files with you. It saves you time. You can just copy the materials and settings over and match what they have. It's one time-saving trick you can do, is literally using an existing file. Or once you yourself have a library of work built up in Keyshot, you can be like, oh, I had that stainless steel setting I dialed in for that last project. I can use it for this one. So again, literally clicking and dragging. And those are just some of the materials that I use and like. And again, we're going to get into the material settings in a minute here. Obviously, we want our glass here to be clear. So I'm going to go to my plastic. I'm going to click shiny, and I'm just going to go for this pure clear shiny plastic. What else? Let's see, my screen. Let me unlink this material. Maybe I'm going to go for like a clear dark on my screen here. But again, you can look at the area around it, right? If that's like too dark, maybe like the clear screen, I don't want them to be linked. That might be better. Sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, I'll use the black paint. Let's see this plastic. I'll use the black paint for a screen sometimes. If I want it to look like the screen is off and like high gloss, high reflective, that's one thing I'll use the black paint for. But again, in this instance with my lighting, everything looks pretty similar. Really what I like, personally what I liked the best here was the, for my personal setup, was the clear, shiny seemed to look best for my screen here. And again, I don't want to link these. All right, so once you have your like general materials picked, and again, it really doesn't matter too much. It's all personal preference. We can start to play, so that was picking from our library on the left. We can now start to play with some things on the right, okay? So if I double click on my handle here, you'll notice it pulls up, it switches to my material tab on the right here for the properties, and it shows a couple things. So first off, it shows a ball of what the material looks like. If you want to change the color, you do it here, where it says diffuse. You double click on this. And here's where you can like drag and pick whatever hue you want. Right? So maybe if I want like a, I have no idea what I want this to be. I want something kind of neutral, like maybe like a warm gray for my handles. I can set that. That's the diffuse. The diffuse is like the main color. Specular is kind of like what the highlights are. I can show that better when we change our scene. And honestly, maybe we should do that now because that may change how you see your materials. So this is like, we kind of got the basics started. Again, if you double click on something, it brings up the material properties. So again, if I like double click on this here, the body, it's going to bring up the body. This roughness slider is how shiny it is. So all the roughness turned all the way down is really shiny. Refractive index has to deal with refraction. I believe that's how the reflections are refracted. Refraction is, I'm having trouble with a scientific description, but it's when you put like a straw in a glass of water and it looks like the straw is cut and misaligned. That's because the light is refracting. My best understanding is the light passing through the liquid travels at a different speed, so therefore it's, I don't know, I could be butchering that, it doesn't matter. Is that what it is? I don't know. No, I was thinking. Okay. Anyway, yeah, refractive index. I don't really play with that. Mainly the roughness is what's played with here. And sometimes the specular is what's played with. So those are the basics on what you're looking at in material properties. So let's go ahead and change our environment. So I'm going to go over to materials, to my library here, and I'm going to go to my environment library. Now the default, I believe, is under light tint. And really the default isn't bad. The main problem, my main problem with default that I've run into is that it's a little too, it's not really punchy. It's very safe. It's like, there's not a lot of contrast. There's not a lot of like, I don't know what word it is to use. It's kind of flat. Let me see if I can find it here. Maybe it's under basic. Yeah, it's here, it's startup. So what you're looking at here on the left, this is again, this is my rough understanding on how this program works. It takes this view here and it puts it on the inside of a sphere. And right now, the reflections on my microwave here, they're picking up all of these things. It's picking up this like big white light on the top, this hot spot here, a bit on the ground. And again, with holding control, I can rotate the sphere only about the y-axis. I don't think I can roll it up and down. I don't know, things are changing now. Let me check over here. Again, I'm sorry, I'm used to this Keyshot. It seems to be it's picking up some movement even though I'm going up and down, but if I'm looking here, it seems to still be rotating left and right. Those are the main changes. And again, it's holding control and left clicking and dragging. So that's how you rotate the reflections around. So again, looking at this photo, you can see there's not a lot of contrast in the photo. Therefore, there's not going to be a lot of contrast in the reflections. If I double click on this one, everything's going to get really dark and it's really flat, right? Because there's not a lot of highlights in there. If I pick on this, there's a lot of contrast in here. There's going to be more contrast in my reflections, right? There's a little bit more dramatic of a look of what's going on. So for example, right now, here, if I rotate it so it's black on top, if I'm looking at this view here, it's because this portion of the scene is reflecting on the top. That's kind of how to read what's going on. That nuance doesn't matter. If you kind of want the like TLDR, like I don't care about all this background stuff, tell me what the best thing to do is. My default that I tend to use are 2 panels and 3 panels in here. These just, whatever, they tend to give me good results. I think everyone's different. Everyone has different preferences. It also depends what you're rendering. But this has like nice, like gives you like sharp reflections. And And again, it always depends on what it is you're looking for. If you're not looking for reflections that are quite this sharp, um, you can pick from like one of these other options here. Again, it's a menu. Yeah. Yes. It is. Yeah. It should be the same. So sometimes, right, like you want some of these like sharp highlights across an object, and that's like, you can get that from these panels. But more often than not, you want it on that front face, not necessarily on the top. So here, if I pull it to here, you can see I'm getting a little bit on my front glass there. But it all depends. I think when I was playing around with this before, I was using 3 panels. I think 3 panels is a little more even. But anyway, yeah, there's options there of what environment to pick. Again, I tend to default to these 2. So now, let's see. An environment here. So we are an environment on the left. This is our library. On the right is our properties. So I typically don't like my background to be the lighting environment. Why? Because like as I rotate this around, like I don't want this gray line in the back. It's distracting. I tend to set my default to color, is what I pick. I just want it to be a plain white background. You will notice I've seen a trend recently where if the object is, I should really leave this open. Kind of here, like I've seen like renderings on colored backgrounds, but I feel like I've seen a trend, like if the whole object is teal, then the background might be teal, right? Like it's kind of a, I mean, that's really obnoxious. You know, maybe you want something a little more muted, but I feel like I've seen, I'm gonna play with this for a minute, but I've seen a trend where the background and the object itself, I don't know, I'm terrible at this. I would need to play with it more. But they might like relate to each other. I don't know if you guys have seen that. And again, what's up? Let me see if I can find any examples. I was gonna say I feel like that Rotimi does that. Yeah. I've seen it done. I've seen it done across like in different aspects, and I personally don't do it often, and so I'm not good at it. But it does have a cool effect, and I think it's just like I don't know what was Rotimi's explanation. I've never heard his. Just that it looks cool. No, again, it's like I've seen it done. I agree, it looks cool if done right. I would have to play with this more specifically with this background. Let me go back to my environment here, double click on this. This is a bit like of a dirty. Now, obviously you don't want your product to like disappear within there, right? That should be complementary. You could always look at this value here. So if this is like 82, 218, and 138, I'm never gonna remember that. I could double click on this, and retype those in. Oh, can you? Where would? Oh, yes. Cool. I like that. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. So since I'm in here, let me just copy this one. Now, that's an internet thing, right? These hex numbers or no? Anyway, I feel like you see things like this. I'm sure, I don't know. I'm sure with like the lighting, you can get your product to pop off of it a little bit more. So something like that, maybe. In this instance, like, I don't know, does it make sense to then just like go all in? Maybe this matches a little bit too close. So maybe it makes sense here to just drop this down like dark, the background darker a little bit to still have your product pop off the page. I leave it up to you guys. This is by no means a requirement. In Project 3, we talk about mimicking renderings we see online. I'm kind of boring. I tend to be safe. I default to just good old white. But now I have this like super lime green microwave. I'm digging it. And yes, as Trevor noticed, this is how you can rotate your image here, but you can also do it with click and drag. They do the same thing. Size, I wouldn't play with this too much. What that does, again, the object is existing within essentially a sphere. That's this. I'll be honest, I don't know if it's a sphere or a cylinder. But I think it's a sphere because it reflects from the top. What this does is it changes the size of that sphere. It either makes it really big or really small. You can tweak it sometimes. Like I've used this in the past to like try and get a reflection that's on the top to get a bit lower, or vice versa, a reflection on the side to like start to bleed into the top. So for example, let's say something's going on at the top that you want to happen lower. If you make that smaller, I believe it should, because it's getting closer to the object, that reflection should go more to the side. And if you want something on the side to be on the top, if you make it bigger, it stretches that shape out that it's reflecting and that moves it to the top. I'll be honest, I think that's bad practice. That was me being lazy with Keyshot when I was learning it. New fancy Keyshot has this HDRI editor. I believe this is an HDRI file. It's a very, again, there's a lot of nuance to this that I'm not too familiar with. There's a lot of like in-depth information here. The nice thing with this is if you click on this add pin, if you hit Control and left mouse click on somewhere on your object, it will add a highlight at that point. So do you see how I did that? I hit Control and I clicked here, and now this whole face lit up. I did that wrong, though, to be honest with you guys. Let's look at this again. There you go. This is what it is. This little, sorry, I said the wrong thing. Let me back up. I'm going to delete this. Okay, what I said is if you click Add Pin, let me address that first. If you click Add Pin, you'll notice that just like if everyone just like looks up for a minute, when the pin is added, you're going to see that my object's going to get brighter. You see that? And what happened is a new blue dot was added right here. I can now drag this blue dot around in my HDRI editor, or my HDRI file, and it's going to move where that highlight is. Okay? You can always turn it off by checking this. A better way to work, in my opinion, is to use this crosshair. If you click this, it's the Set Highlight tool. When that turns blue, you'll notice a pop-up down here that says Control plus left mouse button to add highlight. I mean, I'm assuming that's what LMB stands for. So if I hold down Control, let's say I want to highlight on my handle here, and I click on my handle, well, it's matte, so it's not nice reflections there. But the program is smart enough to know where to put that spotlight in your HDRI editor that gets highlighted. Let me give a more specific example. Let's say I want a highlight on the side face here. I can hit Control and click on this, and then boom, now I have a highlight here. You could render and set up your lighting this whole way without even starting with these light panels. So for example, I could go back here to my environment. That's why you might pick something like this, for example. It's like, why would anyone ever pick this in their right mind? And so I could come here, and now it's like, okay, where do I want my highlights? I want one on the top. I want one on the side. I want one like across the front face. It's a little bit more work, right? And then here it's like, okay, the one across the front face, I think you can change the shape. Here you go. Yeah. When it's highlighted, you can change it to rectangular. And do you notice how that changes from a circle to a rectangle? This is more work in my opinion, but you can get something incredibly custom if you want to do this. You can change the size. You can change how bright it is. Right? Maybe I want that front face to really pop. I could try and move it a bit to see if I can try and get like a crisp edge across. I think I just kind of had one. There we go. Oh, a little too far. Let's see, can I change the angle? Yup. Anyway, so this is a lot like level 1 to play with your Um, that's a great question. Um, so you could, using this tool, control click on the buttons to make them. Are you? Oh, you're saying you want to make the button light up. Yeah, you could probably do that. Here, let's play it. Let's see if we can do that. So I'm going to turn all the lights off by unchecking them. I'm still in this feature here, so I'm going to control click on just this button here. If I really dial up the brightness, okay, that doesn't seem to be working. And really tone this down, the size. Why did that not work? I should be able to control click right on here. Okay, I was gonna say, I'll be honest, I've never had to do that personally. You could probably play with it, and like I don't know, I'm not familiar with all of the settings here. Like the fall off. Let's see if that's really great. That might make it more like a spotlight. No, really low makes it more like a spotlight. Okay, let's go all black and see what. And now let's try this. Not to fall off way down. I'm sure if you play with the settings, you could get it to be like a spotlight. You may be, I mean, honestly, if it were me and I was trying to do that, full disclosure, I'd go into Google and how to make a spotlight in Keyshot. Now you can make objects, you can make things be emissive. So if you go back to materials here, need to keep it. Let's see, light. So emissive. This, like, if we wanted to have a light in our microwave, ideally we would have built a body that could be the light. Let's see if I can make my plate light up. So a little bit of background here. If you go back to your scene, model sets, this is where our microwave is. This is how you turn it on and off. If I expand this, here are all the bodies in my microwave. Right, so I can click on this, that didn't work. I swear you could select bodies here and they would be highlighted. You know what might also be an issue here? So I'm still in my HDRI edit mode, so I can click done here. I don't know if I have to click save, it should be okay. There we go. Yeah, I think I was still in that HDRI edit mode. So now when I click on bodies, you see how they highlight orange. So I can click on this, now I know this is the window, I can turn this off. And now I can try and apply an emissive light to this plate. I'll be honest though, this is a feature I don't use too often. So, oh, here we go, spotlight. I wonder what this does. I'll be honest, I don't know it, I'm sorry. I'm happy to look more into it and get back to you guys on this. So you'd like apply the light to a light body in the file. Okay. And which one did you use? Did you use Spotlight or Emissive? Oh, here we go, area light. There you go, maybe that's what I was looking for. I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure in the past I've used Emissive. I don't know, again, it may have changed here. Area light looks to be like exactly what it was I was trying to do, for what it's worth. Okay, let's try applying Spotlight to this and see what happens. I'm going to assume, let's apply it to this knob and see what happens. There you go. Okay, so a spotlight, it hides the body and it shines it down. So, and I have never rendered to this level. I use Keyshot on a pretty surface level and more to just get a quick, good looking render. But like you could set up, if you know you want a spotlight above your object, you could like revolve a sphere. And now like when you apply the light to it, it looks like the body disappears. And so that's how you could get a light in there. I do think there is a way to also create bodies in here. Again, in the past you couldn't, but I think in new Keyshot you can like create basic stuff. So for example, if I wanted to create a sphere for that light, we could. Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, you can use bodies to help with your light for sure. So now if I turn this glass back on, now it looks like there's some aliens going on the inside of our microwave. Anyway, yeah. So playing around with lighting environments, HDR, HDRI editor. Again, though, my default is to use in panels here, these side panels, and then I'm going to go back here and just turn my plate back from area light. Actually, I never set it. I'm going to just set this to some glass. And turn that off. Okay. So yeah, that was a deep dive into environments. And again, I typically save that adding the highlight for towards the end, like when I want a specific area to pop. The more I look at these handles, they're kind of boring dull, so I'm going to knock the roughness more down just so these get a little bit more. And now that I have this like green microwave, I don't know, not that it matters. We'll go army green gloss, white gloss maybe. There we go. I'll just leave it there. Okay. So we're talking about environment, picking environments. These are the settings you can change. You can change your brightness. Sometimes you want to make your overall area brighter, darker, but for the most part, I think leave it. It depends on what it is that you're trying to do. Oh no, sorry. Here we go. Settings. I was confused. Here we go. Brightness and contrast. So sometimes, like if you really want your render to pop more, you can really dial up this contrast. Again, I tend to just leave it at 1 and 1. Sometimes, depending on what you're doing, like you can tweak that to make it a little bit brighter, a little bit darker. Okay, some other things here. Sorry. Well, firstly, ground shadows. Depending on what you're doing, sometimes you don't want shadows on at all, especially if you have an object that you want to Photoshop into a different environment. It can be helpful to turn off shadows or an object that's floating. You could have ground reflections if you want to have that like floor reflective effects. Now under lighting, there's something here called self shadows. This is default on. If I uncheck this, we will suddenly see the inside of our microwave here. Self shadows means does the object cast shadows onto itself? So like you'll notice if I uncheck this, like all the shadows cast by the handles and stuff, the shadows on the inside disappear. Again, there's some instances where you don't want that on, but typically you want that off. You can see it looks really kind of flat and boring with it off, and more realistic with it on. All right. Let's see. So I started to get into materials. I jumped back to environment to talk about how we can adjust that. So ideally, you get an environment that you kind of like. You get an angle that you kind of like. And I mean, there's kind of you can kind of flip back and forth between the two, right? So for me, I kind of like this like bright top. I don't know. I could try and spin it so that it's more just catching this edge. And again, I would probably add those HDR, those like spotlights towards the end when I'm trying to dial in like specifically where I want my highlights. So it is kind of a game of going back and forth. So now I could go back to my materials, and now is when I could edit it to say like, okay, maybe this is too shiny. Like, do I want to dial this like way down, right? Based on my environment. Again, like I said, with my handles here, I wanted these to be a little bit more shiny or glossy rather. Let's see what else. So once you have your like environment set up, your lighting's good, you play with your materials, you have them to a good setting. You then next up is you might want to play with like your camera, the view you want. So again, it's like rotating it to find a view that kind of shows your object best. This is kind of like a 3/4, kind of showing the front. It makes sense. Once you have a camera you like, you can go over to your camera portion here in your dialog box. If you click this plus, it saves a camera view. You can name it like hero shot. You don't have to. And this is like where you might want to like show if you set up multiple renders, right? You know maybe you have like a dead-on front view. This is where you could set a new camera for like fronts. And now you can like toggle between, between different cameras. Ooh, that's a really good question. Not to my knowledge, no. You can open up someone else's file and import another Keyshot file. You can import a Keyshot file into a Keyshot file. And so, like, let's say you were, and sometimes you're right. Everyone wants this. You're working on a team. You all want to have the same view. A good way to start would be, like, for example, I might save this file out, and then the whole team can open it up with my view saved, and then they can import their stuff into it, and then set it up the same way. So yeah, if you're like dividing and conquering, like maybe someone's rendering the first 3 concepts and the other person's rendering the second, 4, 5, 6. That's a way you can share view. All right, I'm changing my. So let's say I want to unlink material. I can click on the body here. I can say unlink. Set this back to silver. And that's A-OK by me. All right. So again, you're kind of playing, you're jumping between the camera. Once you have the camera set, that's maybe when you can start to play with where your scene is. Once you see how your materials look, you can start to play with those and adjust them. For example, here I'm realizing I forgot, to get like the indicators on my knobs here. I can go back to the plastic. Make sure it's not clear plastic. Or maybe here's where it'd be good to like tie in this backplate color. So there's another, you can copy materials by shift clicking on a material. So I shift click on this body and right click on the door, and that copies the material over. So that's a quick way to work within Keyshot and bring stuff over. Let's see. If I'm playing with my environments, if I want to, let me try and get a glossy thing across the front here. Again, as a recap, you go to HDRI editor, click on this crosshair, click on this front screen here. I'm going to move it over a bit, change it to rectangular. Again, I'm trying to just kind of get a sharp edge across this front. There we go. Drag it until I see part of this edge on here. Move it back a bit. I forgot to mention you can also make these low lights. These don't have to be highlights. You can have like cast shadows in your reflection, in which case this box would be black, not white, that I'm dragging on the right here. And then again, play with my angle here. Let's go the other way. Maybe take the brightness down just a bit. I mean, again, this could also be done by rotating your scene around until you get kind of like that glare across, the face that you wanted. Okay, I'm going to stop fussing now and move on to the next step. Of course, I always forget this, is you want to save your file, right? So save as, it's whatever, standard Keyshot file. There's nothing unique about it. I was asking if I wanted to save my camera view. Okay, any questions on any of that stuff? I'm sorry, I realized like towards the end there I really got off track with lighting and stuff, but environments, materials, okay. In terms of like setting up good lighting and good rendering, just try and catch highlighted edges, right? So I kind of like that this is white here, it's kind of catching some highlight here. Trying to get a reflection across the front. You can see I set that up manually. You could potentially play by rotating this till you got kind of a view that you wanted. And again, playing with your environments to get that. So just do your best judgment. And again, you're trying to show the object in its best light, right? And show it off, all its features, right? So try and catch those edges. You can look at other, you can look at other renderings as an example. We can see if we look at the other ones that I did previously. This is the default I did for the rubric page. You can see I left my backplate image. This might actually be the default setting. So whatever. Just try and get something that shows off your objects. Okay. Once you're happy with that, we will now move into the next step, which is applying labels. So the way that I like to apply labels is I like to look at the object from a front view and from an orthographic point with no perspective turned on, because when I apply the labels to my objects, I prefer that essentially you're looking like dead on a piece of paper. It just makes it a little bit easier to move around with. So if you go to your camera settings here, you can change it to orthographic down here under lens settings. And then under standard view, change this to front. And these are where we will be putting most of our labels on the control panel area and on the window here. So if we start on the control panel area, I can mouse in to zoom in. I'm going to double click on this material here, and this will bring up the settings. So if you want to double click on your control panel, you'll notice here where it says properties, textures, labels, you can click on labels, and that's where you want to be. So again, hopefully everyone downloaded those labels off of Box. If you didn't, you can do that now. Again, it's under P2. And yeah, it's these three files here. So when you are in Keyshot, to add a label, again, you want to be on the right material you want to add the label to, you click on this plus. And we're adding a label, it says texture. And the way I set these up is these are PNG files. A PNG file has a transparency to it. So you don't want to use a JPEG if you can avoid it. Because, for example, we're going to do the graphic knob icon first. So if you want to select this and click open, it's going to default the label to the center here. If you click on, translate, you should be able to then move and drag your label around. However, something happened here. I'm going to close the door. So I don't know what you guys see. If you guys see something that looks similar to mine, I know that my label is horizontal because this orange line is just that, it's a line. If I click on, I think Z here, it rotates the label so it's facing forward. So I think it defaulted to Y. I'll be honest, it should default to normal to me. I was having this issue the other day when I was messing with this. But try clicking on, I'm going to assume for most of you, you click on Z, you should see an orange box appear. And now if you drag on these arrows and move them over, you should, when you get it over the material, you should see the label appear. Did that work for everybody who's following along? Okay. Now this is the reason why it's a PNG and not a JPEG. If this was a JPEG, everything behind the arc would also be filled in. Because it's a PNG with transparency, I want just this line work for this knob. Now let's see, I think we can click on this green and hold shift and nope. Oh, yep. I was trying to, oh geez. Okay, I'm sorry. I just control Z'd out of everything, so I'm gonna do this again. Oh, it remembered it this time, where it was. I'm very confused now as to why it's rotating for me. There we go, I clicked. So yeah, anyway, the goal is to get to this. Let's see, if you need to rotate it, you can either check this rotate box and move it around that way. I tend to prefer using this dialog here, where I can get it to be exactly what I want. You can change the scale. Let's say it's really big, really small. I believe you can change the size by punching in this number here, which kind of weirds me out that it's DPI because that's like dots per inch. 300 DPI seems to be the right size for me. If for some reason you want to like squash it or something, if you uncheck this and uncheck this link, you can mess with like the width height. That'll be more important in a minute when we get to doing the dots on the screen. But anyway, the goal is to center this on the knob on your microwave. So I'm going to change mine to be a bit. Make that smaller. Oh, okay, yeah. 300 DPI seem to be the right size for me. Let's see. Once you're good on that, I think you can click position. No. Enter. Or just click away. I'm sorry. You can just click on this white box here. So obviously we want to add another knob indicator for the bottom one. So you could do the same thing again. Click add label. I clicked away. So if let's say you get away from that move dialog box, I'm sorry, I thought there was, here we go. I believe it's move texture. Yep. Let's say this like rotating thing disappears. You can select, or you need to move the label later. Select it and click on move texture down here. So again, mine came in default to the perpendicular to the y-axis. So I click on Z here. And now I can drag this over. I can remember my settings from the other one. I can switch this to 90 degrees. Switch this to 300 DPI so they match. They're the same size now. I can drag this down and kind of center it onto this knob below. I'm just kind of judging by eye. I'll be honest, I'm not sure if there's a way to copy the texture and have it be on there twice. There might be, and in retrospect, I probably should have Googled that before going into this. But yep, never mind, there's a checkbox down there. And so you can click away or you can click that checkbox. Let me quickly see here if I can like right click and see duplicate. I do not see off the bat any way to duplicate this. There is like you can repeat. Yeah, here you go. You can repeat vertically. But I don't know if you can set the number of instances. And that the repetition is more if you're like doing like a Louis Vuitton kind of like repeated something like that. That's where you might want to use that. Does that make sense? Does everyone have something that looks kind of like this? For those that are following along, I guess not everyone is maybe doing this. Honestly, that's really all there is to labels. Again, my best advice to you guys is you want to look at the surface. You want to be normal to the surface when you apply it. You want to be in orthographic view. So here, I guess to finish this off, so we're still on this. We can add another label. The final one is the select cancel button. I'm going to click open. My dialog disappeared. So again, I'm going to go down here to move texture. For some reason, it's snapping to my Y, which I don't know why that is. It should. What's it doing for you guys? Is it also going? Is the same thing happening where it's going to the y-axis, like perpendicular to the y-axis, or is it actually snapping to the surface? It is the y. You have to move it. Okay. I'll be honest, I don't know why that is. In the past, it's worked for me like off the bat. And again, same thing here. Switch this to 90 degrees. Again, 300 seemed to be like the size. The DPI might be like based on what the size is, what you brought it in as. Meaning to say, I saved the PNG at 300 DPI, and I set the Illustrator file to match the size of the microwave. So maybe that's why that size is working. And again, you can always click and tweak this. It's not a requirement to have a logo in here, but you could. Doesn't hurt. And again, you're welcome to go in here and edit the files if you want. I mean, if I had more time, I probably would have could always put icons or numbers at the end of each of these indicator marks, but this is just to get a rough experience of like what it is we're trying to get at. On the front glass piece, so that pretty much covers our control panel. On this front glass piece, if we double click it and go to labels, we can put on the same like dots that you see on microwave. On microwaves. That I believe when we looked it up last time, it was for radiation. I don't know, keeping the radiation index. So this one I believe is called Graphic Window 2. If you double click that, same thing. It looks like I have to click on my Z-axis here. Same thing. It looks like I have to rotate it again, 90 degrees. So whatever setting I have. So when I made this for you guys, I tried to make it really big because everyone's window is going to be a different size. So there's a lot of blacks. Whoops, I was just rotating my view. If that happens, if you accidentally rotated your view, you can always go back to camera here, go back to standard views and click on front. So I added a lot of black space around the dots here. What you want to do is, back on your material settings, you just want to make that bigger. So I believe that happens by lowering this DPI. And again, here is where everyone's window is a different size. If you need to stretch, push or pull it, if you uncheck use DPI for scale and uncheck this link so that it's gray, you can change the height independent of the width to match whatever window you have. Again, once you're good, click the check mark here, and then you can go back and reset your whatever shot you had. Maybe it's your hero shot, your front camera, and then take a look at sort of your microwave with all the features on there. And again, so at this stage, it's like you're kind of playing with it. Let's see, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm really not happy with my render. I don't want to sit here and waste time like fussing. Let me see if I can verbalize why I'm not happy with this. If I go back to my environments, like this just feels really washed out. I'm gonna like play with rotating my environment a bit more. Like, I don't know if that, like, this is maybe like not shiny enough. There we go. like trying to pick up on that edge. It might be just like the color too. It's kind of weird. What did I have before? It was a black to start with. Kind of boring though. The green was definitely more exciting. There we go. I'm getting a natural glare across here without that added highlight. But it depends, right? So it's like now it's all trade-offs. It's like kind of the name of the game here. So talk through some of the things I'm doing. Really, I'm just fussing, honestly. But now all of these materials are linked. I have to unlink my indicator material in the middle here. And maybe I want it to match the indicator lights, or you know, if all the graphics are white, maybe I want those to be white too. All right. Let's see, I can always adjust. It looks like my dots are off center, so I can always double click on this pane, go back to my labels here. And let's see, on move texture, I can maybe slide it this way a touch. So it's a back and forth game, right? You're kind of making adjustments going back and forth. So let's see. Yeah. Any questions on labels? Okay. Last but not least is rendering. So that's this render dialog here. And again, I strongly recommend that you save a camera. So here I have this new camera. We'll save this one. That way you can always like go back to it if you need to make changes. You can align stuff. Actually, sorry. Before we get to rendering, one last thing on this stuff. If let's say you want to move your knob here within Keyshot, you can select this. You'll notice my knob has two parts to it. One is the indicator color, and one is the body. If you select this, you can right-click on it and say Move. And now you'll notice that, just like with the labels, we have this kind of, I don't know what to call this, orb tool. But you could rotate the knob within Keyshot, right? So let's say I want to make it look like it has this setting. And that's pretty simple to do because it rotates it about it should rotate it about its center. And again, if you're trying to like figure that out, you could always if you want to make sure that it rotates about the center, you could look at it from a front view. Rotating like the door open is going to be a trickier thing to do. Like I said for you guys, you could, let's say I talked about that gap. Let's say that gap looks really big in Keyshot. You can always change that. Let me show you guys how I would go about that. I would go here and I would look at a top view in orthographic. And let's see, can we, nope, sorry. There we go, it's shift, okay. That work? Let's go here. Let's try down. There we go, okay. Sorry guys, that's been a while since I've had to do this. If you click shift and drag down, it will select only the bodies inside the rectangle. If you click shift, and I mean I think this is a standard computer thing or across some programs. If you click shift and drag up, it'll select all bodies touched by the rectangle. So let's say you want to move, you want to close this gap, right? I talked about like, oh, just kidding guys, the gap is non-existent on my model. You could shift click down. You're only selecting these parts. You could right click on this and say move part. And now you could literally drag this. Oops. I thought that would work on everything. Does it work on multiple? I thought it did. Let's see. Move selection. I'm sorry, not move part. Move selection is what you want. And then now you can move all of this. So let's say you get into your rendering program, you're like, Noah steered us wrong. That gap's like way too big. That's how you can adjust that. Okay. Now, last but not least, rendering, and rendering is really pretty straightforward. You can load your old camera view. I guess my lighting got a bit screwed up. But in general, again, like try and get some edges highlighted, top light. Think about, just showing the object in the best light and clarity. Make sure, if I'm being critical, maybe these dots are a little too dark. I could like try playing with this front face and lightening this up a bit. I don't know. Again, I could like drop a highlight across there in my scene. But once you have everything and everything's nice and clear, you can click on render down here. And these give you your output options. So there's a lot of options here. Firstly, the main thing I would recommend is for your folder here, it's always going to default to where you have Keyshot installed. And it can be really hard to find a rendering. So be sure that you set this folder and pick a place like your desktop so it's easy to find. Or if you've been working out of the same folder, just navigate to that folder and click select folder. The name doesn't really matter. Resolution does matter. So here you go for print size. So 300 dpi at whatever it is you want to print at, 8.5 by 11 roughly. And those are your options. Sometimes it's useful to render out a PNG and check include alpha. What that does is anything that's white in the background will come out as transparent. That's really handy if you're trying to Photoshop. Let's say I want to Photoshop this microwave into a kitchen scene. That's why I might want to do that. I might want to make the settings PNG and check include alpha. For our needs though, you can leave it at JPEG. You don't really need to worry about layers and passes. Under options, also, honestly, at this point, you could just leave it to default and render. That's all that matters. The main thing is knowing where it goes to and having a good resolution. Let's say your computer's really slow and you have issues. You can change the quality here. So one thing that I like to do is, wait, why is that not in there? Here you go. Yes, sorry. You can change it from, so okay, quality is the number of samples. I'll be honest, I don't know the nuance of this. The default is 64, the default's great. A setting that I have used in the past is maximum time. So sometimes it's like, you know what? I only got 30 seconds for this render. So do the best you can in 30 seconds. In the past, I've done crazy things like, honestly now, I only use maximum samples. I've never really had an issue. When I first started using Keyshot, I would use time to set how much time I wanted this to spend. So like and this was more when I was working not at home or at firms or whatever in-house, is like I would just set the computer to render all night. Like give me the best rendering. I've learned now though that that's like overkill. But it's fun to know that you can set the time because it's like you may be in a crunch or whatever it is. You can like say cap it at this amount of time. Again, I would just say do samples. I think the less samples you have, the quicker the render is. And when you're ready to go, you can hit render. If you want to do a bunch of renders and let your computer sit and go do something else, you can say add to queue. Very handy tool. And that's more so what you would be doing overnight, is just doing a bunch of renders. And what that is you just set up a bunch of different views, hit add to queue, and then when you're ready to go, you can hit process queue and it'll start to run through all of those. Let's see, but just to show you guys roughly what this looks like, once you're ready, you hit render. It brings up this view, and it just starts to like process through this. Have you guys all used Keyshot before, or is this the first time for most of you? Okay. I probably should have started with that. Cool. Any questions on anything? Okay. Nice.